Hello farmers and welcome to the harvest season. My name is Al.
And my name is Rochelle.
And we're here today to talk about farming games.
Woo!
Woo! Yeah.
Who doesn't love farming games?
People
no one
who
listening
don't
to this
listen to this podcast.
For sure.
So for this episode, we're going to do the usual stuff. We've got some feedback, what we've been playing, some exciting news, and then we're going to see, this is one of these episodes where I want to find out some information about something, and I know that Rochelle has that information, so I just say, let's do an episode on that, and then Rochelle just teaches us about something. So today we're going to be taught by Rochelle about the history of Rune Factory.
Eventually this series of recordings will become so long that they'll add me to the Great Courses Plus. They'll just be like, and this is the farming game course from Professor Rochelle.
So I thought it'd be nice to get some lowdown on the first, all of the Rune Factories until Rune Factory 4, in preparation for the remake of 4 coming out at the end of this month, very soon. So, and I was going to say the first 3, but then I remembered that actually there are more than 3 before 4, but we can get into that later. So we have one piece of feedback from Dan. Thank you, Dan, for sending us some feedback. Dan pointed out to me that the emails weren't working on the website. They weren't working for like 2 or 3 weeks. So if you tried to send an email, go try again. It's working now. I had mucked something up. I have fixed it now. Thank you, Dan, for letting me know that. But yeah, Dan, thank you for the email. He says that he enjoyed the interview episode. It's interesting hearing about what it's like making games. I agree, hence why we did the interview. And secondly, for your information, Snacko is coming out on Switch, or at least that's the plan. The plan is for it to come out on Switch. So you should be able to play it. Dan says that they wouldn't be able to play if it wasn't on Switch. So that is currently still the plan as far as I know. Whether it will come out at the same time or not, we'll find out one day.
We'll get there.
We will.
Right now, I think they're a little more concerned with what color to make the photo boxes.
Yes.
Which was a recent poll they did. And now I can't stop thinking about, like, I wonder who was saying what color. I'm going to think that every time now.
Yes. Who am I siding with in this poll? I always wonder, though, they have 4 options, though. So the question is, do they have 1 each or 2 each? Or are they just having 1 each and then they add in some extras so that you don't just know it's one or the other?
And that's the true mystery of poll creation.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
I mean, we might. You never know. We'll find out. Maybe one day. Anyway, Rochelle, what have you been playing?
What have I been playing? I have been playing Being Sick, because such is my fate. I have been playing, still working on my goal to complete Stardew Valley, doing pretty well in that. I have 1 single fish that I have to catch to be able to complete all of the cooking recipes, and I've done all of the crafting recipes, and I have almost everybody up to 10 hearts in the whole game. It's been an ordeal. I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. I really need some Animal Crossing. So that's been filling that void for me a little bit.
I wonder if that will completely disappear when the new game comes out, or whether you'll do that as well.
I think I will probably keep going with it. It's a very good game for me to just check in on once or twice while I'm at work. So yeah. That's primarily when I play it.
It's much easier to whip out a phone and do something than get out your Switch and be subtle at your desk.
Well, 1, yes. And 2, I would have a lot of trouble even getting a Switch into my workplace. And even if I could get it in, I probably couldn't get it out. So, because I work in shipping, so if I have a Switch in my bag when I try and walk out, security will assume that I took it out of a box and stole it, and I will get it taken away from me.
Could you not just ship it to yourself?
That is an extremely complicated question to answer for a lot of reasons, and the answer is basically no.
Oh.
First of all, my department doesn't even get the supplies we order half of the time. I am not shipping anything to me.
Fair enough.
So,
you just have to have one. If you can get it into work, you just have your work switch, and it's just always in your office.
Oh, this is perfect. So what you're telling me is I need to buy an additional Switch, which is a perfect excuse to buy an Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch.
Exactly.
And then just take the other one to work, which they probably wouldn't let me in with anyway. But anyway, so I've been playing some Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. Other than that, I've been kind of sick, so I haven't actually been playing a lot. I've actually been sleeping a lot. I did, though. I recently made a horrible mistake.
Oh, no.
So I don't know if you know this, but Zombies Run came out on Pokemon Day 2012.
Oh.
Which is February 27th. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so it's Pokemon/Zombies Run Day now. I went on an adventure to look this up recently. I got Zombies Run about a month after it came out. And what that means is that I have run logs from all of these years, starting in 2012. And every time you start the game, it syncs all your run logs, which I'm sure isn't a problem for people who have not had this game since 2012.
Oh, no.
It took me 1 trillion years to sync all these run logs every time. And I was like, I don't care about these run logs.
Oh, no.
I understand that this is... So I deleted them all, and it turns out that when you delete all your run logs, it deletes all your progress, and it also deleted my little base. So I literally have to unlock the entirety of the game from the beginning in order again.
Oh, I'm sure you'll be so disappointed with having to do the game that you enjoy doing again.
Well, so here, I'm not mad necessarily. I mean, I'm a little mad. I'm mad at myself because this was 100% user error. What's frustrating about it is that I had recently started a replay of the game from the beginning, and I was at the end of season 2. So I just had to do seasons 1 and 2 all over again after I had just done seasons 1 and 2 all over again.
Oh.
So that's been an adventure. So I'm sick, and it's really, really snowy, and I kind of gave up all hope in humanity when I ruined my Zombies Run experience by myself. So I kind of have just been listening to it while pretending I was doing something. And by pretending I mean doing something, I mean staring at my ceiling while being sick. There's a lot of episodes/missions in this that I get very emotional about. Just so you know, I had forgotten how emotional I get about some things. This is a good story with good characters. Zombies Run, thank you. So don't make my mistakes.
Don't delete your run logs.
Don't delete all of your run logs.
That's good advice.
What have you been playing?
I've mostly been playing Doraemon Story of Seasons, which I noticed you didn't mention at all. I hope you've been playing that.
I did not. Tea, delicious.
So you're the challenge so far. Good. There goes my idea for what our greenhouse episode's going to be this week.
You said that, and I was like, we can talk about this, but also,
oh dear,
I played 2 days. It barely counts as playing.
So I've been playing a lot of Doraemon Story Seasons. I was doing a really good amount to keep me actually finishing the year in the 4 weeks, and then of course they decided to release all of the Milkeries as Gmax capable, so that ruined that. I spent a lot of time playing Pokemon getting all of those Milkeries. It's a lot of raiding, but I got them all now, and I've done that now, so I'm now catching up on myself. I should get there. I'm not far behind anymore, so I just need one evening where I'm not doing anything, and then I can get through 15 days or whatever. I figured out that I just need to do 4 or 5 days every day.
I believe in you.
And I can make it out in the 4 weeks. So I was like, that's definitely doable. And it is, until you spend 3 days straight just doing Milkery raids. So yeah,
Yep.
that's what I've been playing.
Nice.
Shall we talk about some news?
I would
We always
love
do.
to talk about some news.
So there's two small pieces of Stardew news. So the first is that there's a 1.4.4 update out, which brings a bunch of bug fixes. We don't normally talk about all the patch releases for Stardew because they're normally not interesting. It's, they've fixed a bunch of bugs. Great, that's useful, but it's not really something interesting to talk about. However, 1.4.4 does have one new feature, which is that the farm screenshot, which was introduced in 1.4, is now working on consoles as well, except Xbox. So that's the screenshot of it. You can press a button and just have the whole farm screenshotted and saved to your device, which is nice.
Yeah. Also, the 1.4 update is in the process of rolling out to mobile players.
It is now out on Android.
Finally.
And iOS is going through the fun of iOS because, they got to take a long time in iOS just to make sure there's nothing dodgy in that Stardew update.
Yep. Notoriously dodgy Stardew Valley.
Speaking of notoriously dodgy, we got an Ooblets devlog, which is interesting. You can go and read it if you want. Again, we don't usually talk about these things, but I thought it was interesting because they reiterate in the devlog that the game is coming out in 2020. So that is good to know. At this point, they aren't expecting it to slip past this year. So we don't have any further information on that. I just thought it was useful to know that they are still talking about it coming out this year.
Yeah. Ooblets. It's going to come out. It's looking really good so far. They just finished working on Sea Dangling.
And just don't look at the replies on Twitter because people are still butthurt about Epic Game Store. And they won't shut up about it.
People gotta be mad about something, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking of games coming out in 2020, we got a lovely video of the first 5 minutes of Summer in Mara. Have you seen this, Rochelle?
Yeah. So, I think I've seen about 2/3 of this. I may or may not have been watching it on my phone in my bed as I was going to bed.
I fell asleep.
And may or may not have fallen asleep at some point.
Dear.
Look, I'm sick.
So I think there are a couple of interesting things on this. So one is that the game looks lovely. It's a very nice looking game. And I think this is the first actual gameplay we've seen. We've seen like rendered trailers and stuff like that, but this is unedited gameplay footage, and it looks really nice. I think I like the dialogue in the game because it's one of those nice looking ones where they've got the full art of the people talking, and they've got the snippets of voice acting in the dialogue as well. So it's not actual voice acting, it's just like small noises and sounds
Flavor
as people
text voice acting.
There we go. That's I knew Rochelle would have the right word for it because
I mean, I don't know if that's the right word. That's just what I call it. But
well, it sounds like the right word, so let's go with that. So that's nice as well. It's a lovely, bright, colourful game. One thing I would say is that I think some of it feels a little bit like it might kind of take a long time to do certain things. Like planting seeds, for example. It looks like you have to go up to the bit where you've where you've tilled the ground, and then you have to press a button, and then you have to choose which seed to go in it, as opposed to in most games you have it like set and you're just going along pressing the button as you go over each bit. Having said that, it probably is because it's probably less focused on the farming than other things, and it's more about the exploration and the story. So it's probably not a big issue, as long as you're not kind of thinking about it as this is a farming game,
and I mean,
it's
sense. Also one of those things where I guess we'll see how it ends up when you actually play it, because in context it might run smoothly, it might feel disjointed. You don't really know until you actually get the gaming experience. So
yeah, and obviously this is the first 5 minutes of this game is basically tutorial, so you're not actually watching someone playing after they've been going for a while. So it could be that it speeds things up, or like there's other things that you get later in game to put seeds across multiple bits, or we'll see. But it looks very nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very
looks
excited.
So nice.
Sadly, we still don't have an exact release date, though.
Yeah, it'll come out. I am very excited. Like, I'm a big fan of, like, the character designs, and one of my favorite things that I noticed is that, like, the characters have a ton of personality in this. Like, they have a lot of personality, and their art has a lot of emotion and stuff, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And that's my commentary from the 2/3 of these 5 minutes that I've seen.
Yeah, so that's Summer in Mara. We'll have the link to that video in the show notes, but it's good. If you're on the fence about whether to buy it or not, have a look at it. It might make your mind up.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you're waiting for us to actually play it and tell you whether it's any good.
Which, I mean, to be fair, that will also happen, so.
Yes, it will. I've paid enough money and waited long enough for this that it's definitely going to be a game we cover.
I mean, it has to be, because it's also a game I'm very excited about, so.
So that's the news. Seems like quite a slow episode news-wise.
Yeah, we're kind of at like the end of the slow season for games development in the year, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Usually like wintry is kind of slow in general for games, so.
It'll be picking up soon though.
Very soon.
Because we have at least 2 releases in February, and then we've got at least one in March.
Animal Crossing is in March.
Yes, that's the one I was referring to.
I just so you know, Animal Crossing comes out on March 20th.
I believe so. I believe so. The same day as Doom Eternal. I did see
someone at Doom made a mistake.
I did see someone pointing out that like the most calm, relaxing, and wholesome game is coming out on the same day as the game that's probably the most brutal and graphic, and you are literally in hell blowing up demons. It's like the 2 extremes of gaming coming out on the same day.
I would say it's going to be great, except that whoever works at Doom made a horrible mistake because Animal Crossing is going to crush it. The Animal Crossing fandom is vast and powerful. Although I will say, I did read a really good fan fiction once that was about Animal Crossing New Leaf actually being an evil, bad dystopia. It was very interesting. It was very good. It was well written. Anyway, this is not an Animal Crossing podcast.
Yeah, and if we're not careful, this will all turn into capitalism talk.
As every episode threatens to do, for some reason.
Anyway.
Speaking of capitalism, that's not a good transition.
No, that works very well because there's about 100 of these games in this list.
So yeah, I bet you didn't know that they were like in between games for the Rune Factory series.
I did not. I did not know that until I looked up the list just to double check that there was 1 and 2 and 3, and no, there's more.
There's more. So we're gonna go through this. I will probably give a very brief overview on some of the games. Are there any points I can give that are general to every game?
I guess the idea of what Rune Factory is, just in case anyone hasn't actually played one or heard you describe it before.
Yes. Right off the bat, I would like to say that I will not be spoiling the end of the game for any of these games. I've tried to keep my notes enough so that you know what's going on, but not enough so that you know what's going on. That was a bad way to phrase that, but that's how the brain isn't working. So the Rune Factory series, as noted in the subtitle of, I was going to say the first one, but I think it's actually Rune Factory 3 that ended up dropping the subtitle, which is a fantasy Harvest Moon. So you have all the Harvest Moon, you have the farming and the villagers that you make friends with and all that jazz. But also it's a fantasy Harvest Moon, so it's also part like JRPG dungeon crawler kind of a game.
Obviously, I mean, why wouldn't those things go together very well?
Why not? They go together great, and I love it. It's amazing. All of these take place in the same world, there's actually a huge amount of character overlap over these games. Like, I mean, there's a couple of games that are really obvious because they literally have the same protagonist. But, like, characters from one village will often visit another village or, like, reappear in a different storyline in another game. For example, there is a character who is a child in the first Rune Factory who shows up as, like, an older marriage candidate in the next game. Like,
oh no.
It's very common. They, like I said, they take place in the same world, the same setting. I'm pretty sure all of the games take place in the country of NORAD, in different, like, towns within that country. There's an overarching bad guy of, oh geez, how do you say this? Because, see, here's the problem. I think I would probably pronounce this word as sex, but I don't know if I should pronounce this word that way.
Just say sex.
I'll get
just
there.
say sex.
It's just, I hate this. Anyway, so they have the same setting. They have a lot of the same overlapping characters. They have a lot of the same lore because they all take place in the same world, etc. So let's go through this. Do you want to hear about these games?
I would love to.
All right. So
it means I don't have to play them.
Which is fine. Honestly, I was very tempted after working on writing this up to, like, go back and play them, and then I remembered that I probably wouldn't enjoy that. So,
if only they were remaking one of them so that you could play that.
Oh, no. If only. I don't know. I think part of the problem is I really want to play Rune Factory 2, but it is also an old game. I guess we'll see. So,
we will see.
The first Rune Factory game was Rune Factory: A Fantasy Harvest Moon. It came out on the Nintendo DS in 2006 for Japan, 2007 for North America, and everyone else got it in 2009.
That is a long time.
Yeah, you're going to see a pattern with this, which is part of the reason why I'm not terribly surprised in retrospect about us getting it a while after Japan. You're going to find a pattern in this. So, of course, as with many games, you can name your character in this, but they have a default name, so I'm just going to always refer to characters who you can name by their default name, just so you know. So, this game starts out with this guy. He clearly is having a bad time. He collapses in front of a house and is helped by a woman named Mist, who's like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And he's like, "I don't know anything about myself because I have amnesia, I guess," which is going to start a really great trend. Drinking game for this game, every time we say the word amnesia, you take a shot of apple juice. There you go. So you end up deciding that she can just call you Raguna, I guess. Just now realizing that I've never said a lot of the names in this series ever out loud ever.
Yeah, that's not an unusual thing.
That's an adventure.
And especially for us when we don't really hear things in our heads, it's probably less of a...
Yeah.
Most people will have a standard pronunciation that they've been saying in their heads all the time.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, before I go on an Aphantasia rant. So Raguna shows up in this small town called Cardia, on the border of the NORAD kingdom. With no memories, complete amnesia, doesn't know anything about himself. And this very kind, strange local woman named Mist is like, "Well, I can help you. Here's a farm you can work on." So you're given/tricked into farming this farm. In the beginning intro, it is proposed that perhaps you were an earthmate, which is a specific kind of person who can communicate with monsters and summon monsters, which normally have to be summoned because monsters live in a sort of alternate dimension.
Oh.
Sort of called... I wonder if it's called the same thing consistently, because I remember names like the First Forest or the Forest of Beginnings. So essentially something like that.
So something obviously ominous.
Yes. Well, sort of. So what happens is that every time you kill a monster, there's like essentially a magic spell cast on your tools and your weapons. So you don't really like flat out kill the monster. You actually just send them orbing away back to the world they came from, essentially.
Humane monster hunting.
Yeah. So you... Okay. I could also just read what I wrote, but that would take less time and be more efficient. So we can't do that. So Raguna gets tricked, kindly given this farm to work and kind of moves into this town. It feels very classic farming game. You get to know the villagers, you farm your farm, and then you kind of notice like, oh, just south of my farm, which is south of the town, is like this cave, but I can't go in there. So you go and talk to the mayor, and the mayor gives you tasks to complete, and then will give you permission to go into the caves. And that's how it's going to go every single time. To unlock each cave, you have to do something to further the story in the main game. Each cave you go into, it has this very strange thing happening where there's these machines set up, and you're not quite sure from where because they definitely don't look like anything that comes from NORAD, and they keep summoning monsters that will spawn and attack you, which is not quite fun. So in the caves, you're trying to go through and beat the boss monster. It's a dungeon crawler. It's very fun. Each cave essentially has a season that the cave kind of acts like a little greenhouse. So there's plots of land and you can plant crops in the cave. And the reason you do that is because if you plant X number of crops and they grow fully, there's these little rune spirits that will pop up and they will give you energy when you collect them. So you can use them to get through the cave faster with energy and stuff. Because if not, you have to sleep in the caves.
Oh, no.
Yes. So you notice in your first cave, it's a very strange thing that these machines are summoning monsters. Again, they don't look like anything that comes from the kingdom of NORAD. So the whole plot of the game is essentially trying to unravel the mystery of what's going on. You encounter the sort of series-long big bad guys, the Sex Empire, along the way. So how is that for a bad overview of the first Rune Factory game?
That is very good. Maybe. I don't know. I've not played the game, so I can't tell you how accurate it is.
I mean, I guess the short version is that you show up in this town with amnesia. You're given a farm to farm because you have to live. And you end up going through a whole bunch of dungeon crawly dungeons to solve essentially what is a political mystery.
Oh,
So
that sounds like my kind of game.
yeah. So that's the first Rune Factory game. It was successful enough that they're like, let's make another one.
Which it looks like came out before Rune Factory did in Europe.
Yeah,
obviously.
These dates I think are really interesting. It's part of the reason I added them all into this. So Rune Factory 2 is also a Nintendo DS game. This time it came out in Japan and North America in the same year, 2008. I believe it was like 6 months delay or something like that. But didn't come out everywhere else until 2010, which you'll notice this game came out for Japan and North America before the first one even came out in Europe.
There's so much more to talk about this looking at the later games and their dates. But one thing I would say that is very interesting about this is they obviously decided to make this game purely on the Japanese numbers, right? They couldn't have even waited for North America before deciding, right? Because that's 2007 and 2008. So they clearly had to have decided only on the Japanese numbers. So presumably, if it hadn't sold well anywhere else, they would have gone, oh, well, we just won't localize it. But it obviously did well enough in North America to localize it.
So Rune Factory 2, A Fantasy Harvest Moon, came out in 2008/2010. In this game, you show up as a protagonist named Kyle. You stumble into the town of Alvarna, another town in the country of NORAD, with amnesia. You may be sensing a pattern here.
Of course.
Not knowing who you are, a kindly woman finds you who gives/tricks you a farm to work on, since you have to do something to support yourself. I don't know if you're sensing a theme here.
These are definitely different games, right? Like
Yes,
this
they're
isn't just the
definitely different
localized
games.
version, and so the name's different.
Nope, they're just wait until you hear what's coming up in paragraph 2.
Okay, I am ready.
Uh,
There is no second paragraph in this,
so
but I'm ready.
there was in the first draft of these notes. I'm sorry. I may or may not have overwritten the description of everything, and then thought, I can't do this. Everyone will fall asleep. So, you move into this farm, you're farming a farm, you're getting to know the villagers. It's very farm game-esque. You get married, you have a kid, you even build a school in this one. It's very neat. You build this school, and then, after you build this school, there's a nice cutscene. There's like a 7-year, I think, time jump. There's a nice cutscene where in the middle of the night, you abandon your family. You're just like, your kid wakes up and it's like, Dad, where are you going? And you're just like, don't worry about it. And you leave.
No.
And then from that point on, you play as your child, who, depending on the gender, will be named Aaron or Arya.
So is this a set point in the game, or is it once you like hit a certain story point? Like when does that happen?
You build a school, and it's after you build the school.
Okay, so it's specifically the building the school that triggers that. Okay.
Because you build the school for the children, and then you play as the children. And part of the mechanics of the game for like the second generation portion of this game is you go to the school and you learn skills and you learn how to do things. But then also you're going and adventuring. So like you play a physically smaller character now, so you can get to areas of the map that you couldn't before as an adult. You can go through the final ends of the dungeons and things like that. And the whole story is about trying to figure out where your father went when he abandoned you. And maybe even save him. So, definitely not the same as the first game. It was a cool thing to, like, play as your child. There's a very strange thing in it where, like, you can, as a child, you can, like, pretend to get married.
Like
literally within the game, they're like, you're gonna play wedding today. Like,
I mean, I guess that makes sense. Kids do that.
But that's, yeah,
well,
kids do
with
that.
friends do.
Wow, that's exactly what I was just thinking. I was like, I know kids did that because I wasn't cool enough to do it, but I was alive enough to watch other people do it.
Rochelle, we are more similar than sometimes we might feel.
Yeah. But like, you end up doing that when you get, when Kyle, the first generation protagonist, gets married, there's actually a whole system where all of the bachelorettes you don't marry end up marrying other characters, and they all have kids. So when you're playing as Aaron or Arya, you're running around playing with the children of the characters you were playing with as Kyle. It's kind of fun. Trivia fact, this is actually the first Rune Factory game I completed. Did not complete Rune Factory 1 the first time I played it. But it's fun. There's especially a lot of like crafting. This whole series, there's like a whole thing about crafting. You craft tools, you craft supplies, you craft armor, you craft weapons, you craft everything. They go extra heavy on the crafting in Rune Factory 2. It was great. Excuse me. So far, we have encountered the stories of 2 random men wandering into 2 small towns in NORAD with amnesia. Do you want to guess what comes next?
No, I want you to tell me.
Well, if you were guessing that a random man with amnesia would wander into a random town in the country of NORAD, you're wrong, actually. Because the next game that came out was a game called Rune Factory Frontier. This actually came out on the Wii in 2008 in Japan, which, if you'll notice, is the same year as Rune Factory 2. Except it didn't come out in North America until 2009. And Europe until 2010, and it just never got an Australia release.
It couldn't come in Europe any earlier than 2010, because then it would be coming out before or at the same time as Rune Factory 1. And that would just be a step too far in the weirdness.
Let me tell you, it would be more than one step too far in the weirdness, because the story of this game is you're actually continuing the story of Raguna from Rune Factory 1. So, the sort of, in the introduction, he explains, I showed up in this town with amnesia, and this woman named Mist helped me out. And then one day she disappeared, and I was like, I'm going to go find her. So he leaves on an adventure to find Mist and ends up in a small town. Town is kind of a generous word to use. This is a very small, possibly bare minimum technically town. Not terribly far away from Cardia, which is the village in Rune Factory 1. Named, we're going to call it Trampoly. Trampoly?
Yeah.
I assume it's like trampoline without the any at the end. I don't know. Trampoly, whatever you want to call it.
It's all good.
Words are hard.
Yeah.
You show up and you find Mist there, and you're like, okay, cool. Except she's like, I have to stay here because something is calling to me. And you end up watering this weird plant by a tower, and it grows a giant beanstalk, and you go up the beanstalk into the sky. This is... Are you okay?
I mean,
is this what you were expecting?
I love it. It's great.
And in the sky, above Trampoly, is a giant whale-shaped island called Whale Island, floating in the sky. May or may not be sentient. Wait
just a minute. You just brushed over that like it was nothing. I'm sorry, the island might be sentient.
You talk to the whale.
Oh, I mean, of course. This is giving me...
you have to understand.
This is giving me serious Link's Awakening vibes here.
So, you find out that Whale Island is held aloft in the sky by a bunch of runes.
Okay, not turtles.
No.
It's
runes.
not turtles all the way down this time.
No, it's turtles all the way up. It's whales all the way up. So Whale Island is held in the sky by runes, and the runes are kind of starting to fade and kind of threatening to drop Whale Island onto the town of Trampoly and crush it. So, that's not good.
Yeah.
So the entire story here is like trying to restore the runes so that the island continues to float and to not crush the town. Like I said earlier, there's a whole bunch of overlapping characters in this entire series. So for example, there's characters from Rune Factory 1 that show up in Rune Factory 2. There's also a huge amount of character overlap with Rune Factory 1 and Rune Factory Frontier here. So not only do you have Raguna and Mist, but a bunch of other Cardia characters show up in Trampoly. A bunch of the marriage candidates are also marriage candidates in this game, etc., etc. So, I mean, like, I believe canonically, Trampoly is very close to Cardia and often a place that Cardia villagers visit, which seems a little strange to me because Cardia is supposed to be a tiny village on the edge of the country. Going where people go to visit an even tinier village not far off, I'm not going to question it. So that's Rune Factory Frontier. That's their first entry into a system that is not the Nintendo handheld system. And up next, we have Rune Factory 3, which we're going back to the Nintendo DS. Are you ready for these dates?
Oh, I'm ready. Always ready.
This came out in 2009 in Japan, 2010 in North America, and 2011 in Europe.
I feel like I'm going to need a graph for all these. Because I feel like this... So this is the fourth game now, right? The fourth Rune Factory game, although it's Rune Factory 3. And I feel like it's like the third year. Like, I feel like only 3 years have actually passed. That's very, very fast. Okay.
It's very fast, especially for you in Europe. If you live in Australia, you're very confused right now because you got Rune Factory 1 and 2. You never got Rune Factory Frontier. You also never got Rune Factory 3. It's very strange. Poor Australia. Because Rune Factory 3 was very fun. Are you ready to hear the overview of this game?
Always.
So, what would you guess is the beginning of this game based on everything we've heard so far?
Someone has amnesia and then gets given a farm.
Close.
Ooh.
So in this one, rather than a random man walking into town with amnesia, a golden woolly falls from the sky.
Okay.
A woolly is a type of monster. So one of the things that sets this apart from like the main Harvest Moon series is that rather than like livestock for your farm, there's just monsters, and you can tame some monsters and use them as livestock. One of them is a woolly. It's essentially a sheep. It's like a it's like I want you to imagine a snowman, but instead of a snowman, it's a sheep. That's a woolly.
Oh.
So this golden woolly falls from the sky, and a young woman is like, "This is strange. I'm going to take care of this creature."
Obviously, that's what you do.
Yeah, which, to be fair, is very strange because in this entire series, like, monsters and humans don't really interact. It's not really a thing. Like, you go into caves where monsters are, and then you kill them. And sometimes you tame them for eggs. But anyway, but then in the night, the woolly turns into a human who, guess what, has amnesia because this is a Rune Factory game. Don't know. The character doesn't know who he is. Decides that his name's going to be Micah.
Oh, obviously.
When asked. Yeah. And is like, I don't know who I am or where I came from. Help. And so the woman kindly offers a farm because you have to support yourself. This one is kind of fun. You actually live in a giant tree in this one called the Sharent's Tree. You're in Sharent's Town. The woman who saves you is the daughter of the leader of the village, and her name is Shara. So what happens in the story here is that Micah, as he begins to live a random farming life, discovers that he's actually half human, half monster, and can shift forms between the two. So there's some parts of this gameplay where you have to be a human in form, and some parts where you have to be a woolly in form.
That's quite something to learn.
Yeah, that's kind of startling. At least in this one, part of the story of this one is unlocking your memory. Because up until now, which is never addressed, you're like, I lost my memory. I guess I'm starting my life over again. It's fine. Okay. I mean, I guess you kind of learn in Rune Factory 2 with Kyle, but you don't know that until you're already playing as your child and it's the end of the game. So over the course of this game, you slowly unlock your memories. A huge part of it is that out in the desert in the middle of nowhere, there is another village of people who are kind of like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, because I haven't played Rune Factory 3 in a while. I think they're also kind of like, I want to say they're like kind of like the same sort of half monstery type people. They're unicorn people, okay? They're people with unicorn horns. They're clearly considered to be another species of people separate from humans. And the whole plot of this one is that the Sharent's Tree is dying, and thus the land around it is dying, and the humans and the Univere people is what they're called, which startles me because when I work in shipping, and I often ship for a company called Univere, which sells airplane parts.
Of course.
So not the airplane part company, but the unicorn horn people.
I mean, basically the same thing. Right?
I mean, yes, because you have to be able to marry one of them, obviously. So my brain was on a different track than what you just said, but I would like to acknowledge that A+ joke you made. So that's the story of that game. Unlocking your memories, trying to keep these two peoples from murdering each other, trying to keep the land from dying by helping the Sharent's Tree in Sharent's Town with amnesia. I don't know what it is about amnesia in this series.
Do you think like somebody on the team got amnesia and is like, I really feel like there's just not enough representation of people with amnesia in the games industry, and so I'm just going to keep going?
I don't know. I truly don't know. Because it's almost every single game. Like, the exceptions are like the non-DS games, but then also like Frontier kind of still also counts because you're playing as the same character from the first game who had amnesia. You know what I mean? Like, you don't continue to discover the history of Raguna. Like, you just never know. There's some stuff implied, but like Raguna never knows that. It's very strange. Anyway, so the only real, true, 100% sort of exception is the next game, which is called Rune Factory Tides of Destiny. Are you ready for something startling?
Yes.
This one came out on the Wii and also the PlayStation 3.
Which is obviously the best known Nintendo console.
Yeah. I think this game actually in Europe and Australia, it came out in Australia this time.
Of course, they didn't
all
get
of these
3 or Frontier, but they get this one, obviously.
Yes, obviously. Which poor Australia. But when this came out in Europe and Australia, I believe it was only for the PlayStation and not for the Wii.
Really?
So
interesting.
Yeah. Which is weird.
Very.
But this is a weird game, so that's fine. So, surprisingly, you don't start this one with amnesia.
Oh, no.
But rather, you start with a couple of friends named Aiden and Sonia, and they're living their life on their home island of Fenith Island, and one day they stumble into a curse, and they wake up, and the island they knew has changed entirely. They are in one single body now. There are 2 people in Aiden's body.
I have so many questions.
They have, and they have no idea what's going on. So do they. This is going to shock you. I know you weren't going to be expecting this point. A random woman finds them and ends up giving them a place to live. Every game, even when they start differently, every game starts the same in this series. But in this one, the gimmick is that you find a seed, and one of the 2 people in this one body insists that we're going to plant it by our home, and you plant it, and it grows into a giant plant golem, which you name Emer?
Sounds good.
That's the default name. You can change it. And you use this golem to go on adventures. You cross the ocean. You raise islands up from the sea and stuff like that. You solve the mystery of what the heck happened to you. Poor Aiden and Sonia, who ended up in one body. And how to maybe separate themselves again. So
That's good. But I still have questions. Because
yes.
are they like controlling different parts of the body each, or like do they get a certain amount of time over the whole body, or is one of them just in the back seat the whole time? Like, how does it work? I mean, I know neither of them. It's you as the player that's controlling.
See, we're
them,
gonna
still don't. I want the lore. It's important.
I'm doing a slight bit of emergency research here. Trivia fact, this is the only Rune Factory game I've not played. So you go through the game, and so you have your 2 childhood friends, Aiden and Sonia. Sonia is specifically in Aiden's body. That is actually, the fact that Sonia is the one without a body is plot specific and important. So you go through the game, and like, I'm pretty sure people know that there's 2 people in this one body, but they're seeing Aiden, and Sonia is kind of like a ghost character who you can like Sonia and Aiden talk to each other all the time, but they're 2 people in one body.
Fair enough.
Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Not really, but
at all.
It kind of yeah, it's something. I don't think there is really an answer to it.
I mean, essentially what it is that they probably come across to the other villagers as like someone with 2 personalities. I mean, part of the story is figuring out what happened to them and how to separate them again. So, like, the villagers know that there's 2 of them in the one body. This is, like, the one Rune Factory game that feels like a weird exception to the plot rules. Because you're playing as 2 characters. You can eventually separate them. You pick one or the other to play as. There's one thing in this that really frustrates me. Because if you're not... You can get married. You separate, and you can get married. And Aiden has, I think, like 12 bachelorettes to choose from. And Sonia has like 3 bachelors to choose from. I'm making a face right now, but it's very silly and absurd. But anyway, and so that's Rune Factory Tides of Destiny. You have to solve a big mystery about what the heck happened to you and try and get Sonia her own body back.
Very interesting.
So,
I mean, it's a story, that one. You can't fault them for the weird bits.
I mean,
and
I know
pieces
the whole
that they
story.
have. Although they all quite often start in a similar way, most of these games, they all seem to have something interesting in them.
Yeah. Like they all have like very distinctive stories. There's actually things going on. I know it doesn't sound like it from my descriptions. It's because I'm trying not to tell you the plots and ruin the whole stories for everybody. Because people don't like spoilers. But they all do end up making sense in the end. You do figure out a lot of stuff in the end for everything. And again, because they all take place in the same world, you're kind of like slowly building up this story of the world in general and things like that. The next one to come out was Rune Factory 4. Do you want me to give a very brief overview?
Yeah, we'll go very brief.
So Rune Factory 4 was the last one to come out. This one was for the 3DS.
Ooh.
It came out in Japan in 2012. It came out in North America in 2013. And it came out for the whole PAL region in 2014.
Wow, that's a whole year quicker than most of them.
Like, the timing on this it's always been like this.
It's all right. They've improved it for this the remake because, you know, everybody else is getting it less than a year after Japan, so that's pretty good.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, Rune Factory 4 starts out a character on a flying airship, which is a boat flying in the sky. We're in that kind of a world. Whose gender you get to choose, by the way. You can be Lest, the male protagonist, and Frey, the female protagonist. Which is kind of sort of not something you've explicitly been able to do before. So in Rune Factory 2, in the second generation, you do have influence over the gender of your child. And then in Tides of Destiny, you kind of play as both Aiden and Sonia until they split, and then you can choose to play as either Aiden and Sonia. But other than that, you've been default a male character this whole time, so this is the first one where, from the beginning, you can choose which you are. So Lester Frey is flying on an airship, gets into a fight with some people in the airship, falls out of the airship, and lands on a big dragon named Ventuswell in the town of Selphia with amnesia. Because this would be a Rune Factory game if you didn't have amnesia.
I'm shocked.
From there, it's kind of assumed, because they were expecting to have, like, the royal prince/princess was going to come to rule the town. So, you just showed up, so it must be you.
Ah, yes, that
old
like, cool,
trope.
Yes,
and they're like, cool, you're gonna...
What I like to call the Animal Crossing story. Oh, we were expecting someone. You must be them. Let's not check.
Well, to be fair, you have amnesia. You don't know if maybe you were.
Sure. There are other ways to check the person, because here's an interesting thing for you. Did you know that people lie?
No. And to be fair, you have amnesia. You literally can't know. I mean, you can know because within the, like, this is like beginning tutorial stuff. As they're starting to teach you how to like rule the town, essentially, another character shows up and it's like, it's me. I'm Arthur. I'm the prince. I came here to rule you. And everyone's like, But then Arthur's really cool and is like, that's fine. If you want to do that, I can go to do my own studies. So you rule this town.
I feel like, doesn't that happen in Animal Crossing as well?
Sort of. In Animal Crossing New Leaf, what happens is you show up and they're like, you're the mayor. And it doesn't matter if you argue. They're like, you're the mayor. And then the next day you wake up and you get a letter. And then it's from the actual person who was supposed to be mayor, who is like, well, I was going to be mayor, but thanks for taking over my duties. Bye.
Yeah, I thought it's basically the same story.
Basically.
100%. Except in Animal Crossing, you have no excuse because you don't have amnesia.
True. Although, to be fair, in Animal Crossing, you can really, really try to argue your case.
That's fair. That's fair, yeah.
In this, you're just kind of stuck going with the flow.
I love how, yeah, I mean, this is not the Animal Crossing episode, but that is so ridiculous how they're just like, oh, no, you are. You are. You're like, no, I'm not.
You are. Definitely. Most definitely.
Oh, my word. You're really, really insistent.
Mm-hmm. So, and that kind of ties into, like, every one of these games kind of has its own gimmick. I mean, Rune Factory 1 is just default whatever it is. In Rune Factory 2, it has, like, the 2 generations gimmick. Frontier has some gimmicks with, like, how you interact with, like, villagers and stuff. Like, you can say things to villagers and it will change, like, the course of their story and things like that. I think the prime and my least favorite example is that there's a very cute, heavier character who is a marriage candidate, and if you make a certain comment to her, she will feel insecure about being fat and then go on a diet. And it's really, I just hate it. Because I love her character. She's like my favorite character, and she's very, very cute. And then you happen to say, like, man, I'm not really into fat girls. And she's like, well, I guess if I want to marry this guy, I have to go on a horrible diet. And then from there on, like, you can't give her any of the gifts you used to give her because she likes, like, foods and desserts. And she refuses them if you try and give them to her. It's awful.
Oh, no.
So you can also choose to not do that to her. And if you ever play this game, I highly suggest that you don't, because it's messed up. But then, like, Rune Factory 3, like, the gimmick is that you're half human, so you can turn into a woolly. I guess Tides of Destiny, the gimmick is that you're 2 people in one body. But, like, the gimmick of this one is because you're running the town, very much like Animal Crossing New Leaf, where you're the mayor. So you get to do things like decide when you have festivals and things like that. And actually, there's a whole town development sort of aspect to this. And that's the gimmick of this game. On top of having an exceptionally long story. Like, this game has tons of story. It basically breaks down into 3 separate story arcs. So, like, you're going to think you finished the game, and then there's going to be more. And then you're going to think you finished it again, and then there's still going to be more. And that's the game that they're remastering that's coming out very, very soon. How many days after this episode comes out is that coming out?
Well, it depends where you are, but either 10 or 8. Is it the 26th in America? Or it's the 28th here, I think, isn't it? We talked about this last episode. Come on.
Yeah, because it's only a couple days apart.
Let me just... Is it sad that the quickest place for me to check is actually in our show notes? It's like... Because nowhere else has both of them together.
Excuse me. So it's coming out on the 25th for North America and the 28th for the PAL region.
So either a week or 10 days, depending on where you are after this episode comes out.
So within the next 2 weeks, you can be playing this game.
Yeah. But on your Switch. You don't have to use your 3DS.
On your Switch, it's going to be nicely remastered, and all the localization's going to be fancy and redone, and it took them a long time. And there's going to be additional aspects of this game that weren't in the original, and you can go on an adventure and you can learn the story of the native dragon. Dragons are also a thing in this series. I can't believe I got through this entire thing without mentioning dragons. Dragons are in every single game, and they're very important. Just so you know, the dragon of the first Rune Factory is named Terrible. Like Terra, like land, like Terra. Terrible. But the dragon of this game is named Ventuswell, and I am deeply emotionally attached to Ventuswell. So you get to learn the story of Ventuswell. You get to run a town as if this was Animal Crossing New Leaf. You get to, I don't know, marry a guy with no shirt on.
Which can be anyone if you get the swimsuit edition. Sorry, I'm so sorry. And then moving very quickly on. And then once you've played Rune Factory 4 on the Switch, you can then look forward to Rune Factory 5, which of course is definitely still coming out this year, obviously.
Yeah. I don't think we've heard
anything
about it
since
recently,
the announcement, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
He says tappy tappy tapping.
I guess we'll see.
No, I'm not seeing anything. Just nothing since the original Direct in February of 2019. Yes, so you can look forward to that when that comes out, and we'll all experience it new together.
I mean, I'll experience it less new than you.
Well, no, I
but...
mean Rune Factory 5. I meant.
Oh, Rune Factory 5, right. Sorry, my brain is still on Rune
That's
Factory. True story. What it is I was actively looking at the Wikipedia page for the character that I have married every single time, without exception, of playing Rune Factory 4. And that's the Rune Factory series.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Rochelle, for that very succinct overview of the Rune Factory series.
I could have made it more succinct if I just read what I wrote.
Yes, but it probably wouldn't have come across as well if you just read what you wrote. Some of it was nonsensical. Although I'm not sure whether that was your notes or whether it was the story. Never quite sure. But yeah. So if you have played any of the Rune Factories, tell us what your favourite is and what you're most looking forward to in the remake of Rune Factory 4. Mm-hmm. You can tweet at us at THSPod on Twitter, obviously. You can email us on our website, harvestseason.club, and that is working now. Yep. You can find me on Twitter at TheScottBot. That's Scott with 1 T.
Mm-hmm. And if you would like to tweet me who your favorite marriage candidate in each game is, including your favorite pretend child marriage candidate is.
Oh, that's not a good sentence at all.
If you want to tell me your favorite marriage candidate / which Rune Factory is your favorite Rune Factory, you can tweet me at Miss Delaney with 2 L's.
Thank you so much to everybody who has backed us on Patreon since we launched that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
No, on you go.
I was just going to have an emotional breakdown of how I was expecting nothing, and it was more than what I was expecting. Thank you, everybody. I love you very much. That's all I got.
We have smashed through our first goal of covering the costs for the podcast, so that's great. And we are more than halfway towards our second goal of being able to cover at least one new game every month, which, now that I think about it, seems like a dangerous thing to say. But it's there. So if you want to help us get to that goal, you can do so at our Patreon, which there'll be a link to in our show notes, or you can just go to patreon.com/thspod. The same as our Twitter handle.
Mm-hmm.
As me just double
I'm pretty sure because we talked about it and we were like, let's make it the same as the Twitter handle.
Yes, it makes sense. And until next time, have a good harvest.
The Harvest Season is created by Rochelle Delaney and Al McKinley. Our art is done by Maker the Brave, and our music is done by Nick Burgess. Feel free to visit our website, theharvestseason.club, for show notes, including links to things we discussed and transcripts for every episode. Thanks for listening.
You encounter the sort of series-long big bad guys, the Sex Empire, along the way.
I'm sorry.
Look, I'm trying.
It's not saying it like sex. That's not the issue, and it's not it being an empire. It should never actually said the phrase "sex empire."
I know that's the problem, and that's always been the problem.
Oh boy, I just need a minute. Oh.
And the second I typed that, I knew exactly how this conversation was going to go.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am...
Okay, I had the same reaction.
I am mature. I am an adult. I am 29. I am not laughing at the sex empire.